Hello and welcome to Real Talk with Hadassah Chen. When I was a teenager, maybe I had some posters of singers or actors in my dorm years away from home, models, teenager things. If I could have a poster now in my dorm room, now in my older years, it would be of amazing politicians, diplomats, people who make a change, who are not scared to say what they think, who live what they believe in, who are true examples of observant Jews who live by the Torah and mitzvot and know how to lead. They're decision makers and potential game changers in this big game of the world. David Friedman would be on my poster. David Melech Friedman is an American bankruptcy lawyer. In 1994, Friedman met and then represented Donald Trump, then chairman and president of the Trump Organization. He was an advisor to Trump during his successful presidential campaign. In December 2016, President-elect Trump's transition team announced that Friedman was Trump's nominee for ambassador to Israel. In 2019, the Jerusalem Post listed him as one of the world's 50 most influential Jews. The New York Times, in January 2021, described Friedman as one of America's most influential envoys, and as someone who drove the radical overhaul of the White House policy towards the Israel-Palestinian conflict. According to CNN, Friedman stated that Israeli settlements in the West Bank were not illegal and supported Israel to annex portions of the West Bank. For his work negotiating the Abraham Accords, Ambassador Friedman was nominated alongside Jared Kushner for the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. Friedman is an Orthodox Jew and is fluent in Hebrew. He has been married to his wife, Tammy Deborah Sand, since 1981. They have 5 children and 7 grandchildren. Friedman's daughter, Talia Friedman, immigrated to Israel and officially became an Israeli citizen on August 15, 2017, and she's now married. So, welcome, David Friedman.
Hadassah, hi. It's great to be with you.
Great to be with you. What an honor.
Thank you.
So, Moshiach hasn't come still, and you have finished your term. Abraham Accords, Messianic times, they're over. They're over?
No, they're not over. No. Take a breath.
This is good to hear.
Take a breath. Hakol b'dei shamayim. There's still a path forward, and I'm pretty confident.
Morton Klein, the president of the Zionist Organization of America, said when you got elected that you had the potential to be the greatest U.S. ambassador that Israel has ever had. Were you?
Well, I think I'd rather other people answer that question. I won't fight you if you say that, but we'll let others decide.
How would you describe your job under the Trump administration? Magical, crazy, a mixture?
It was all those things. Look, I came to the job, I think the way that I would recommend this to others who take political appointments for, a number of years, not as careerists, but just coming in to do a job. I think you have to come in with principles. I think you have to decide up front what your agenda is, what the goals are, because you're only going to be in office, 8 years the longest and maybe a lot shorter. You have to decide what you're prepared to be fired over. What are the things that if you're asked to do, you'll say, I'm sorry, I can't do that, and you'll walk away. You have to sort of have that laid out, and if you do, I think you're almost guaranteed to succeed, because you'll leave office knowing that you were true to your principles, and that's ultimately I think the only gauge by which you measure success.
Well, you seem to know pretty well what you want and what you don't want.
I was clear in my head as to what I thought was important, what I thought we needed to do, not only to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, but to correct where I thought the U.S. had gone off course in the prior 8 years. So I came in with a as they say, with a bucket list, and I.
Did you mark them all?
I marked them off as we went through them. Some of them were easier than others, but in many of them I had an enormous amount of help. But yeah, I had things that I thought were really important to accomplish.
I spoke to Jason Greenblatt last week, and he told me that the Arabs and the Palestinians are not. They are very similar to us. They are not like. They're very similar to, we're cousins in the end. So during your term, it was pretty quiet.
Look, it was quiet. I think it's very hard to generalize about any people, whether people are like each other or not like each other. there's a lot of gradations among people, but I think it was quiet for a very basic reason. It was quiet because we clearly communicated the message to Israel's enemies that if Israel were attacked, there would be no limitations placed by the United States on Israel's ability to defend itself. So this whole notion of Israel should only act proportionally or should only act, do the minimum necessary. No, Israel's a sovereign nation. They're attacked by Hamas. The rockets are flying into civilian neighborhoods. They have every right to end the war as quickly and decisively as possible. And we communicated that message. Now, when that message was communicated, that made it much less attractive for Israel's enemies to attack because they knew that they couldn't win. And that, to me, was the critical messaging that kept things quiet.
So my other question is the problem the Jews? What's going on within Israel, between religious, non-religious, left, right? Are we our own problem?
Look, we're not as united as I wish we were. Right. I think there still is more that unites the Jewish people than divides them, especially in Israel. Nice. I think Israel is, I look at it almost very simplistically. If I got a flat tire on a road in Israel, someone going to help me? Yeah. And the answer is yes.
In the U.S., no?
In the U.S., no. The U.S., no. So, on that very simple but very telling metric, Israel still has a lot of unity. People care about each other, and I worry far less about the Jewish community in Israel than I do about the Jewish community in America.
Interesting. So after 4 years you've been here, what are you going to miss more about the Israelis?
Well, I'm not leaving. I'm here.
Right.
I'm here roughly half the year, and I love the Israeli people of all walks of life, from secular to religious, and everything in between. I think Israelis are really special people, and I'm very proud of them, and they give me a great deal of pride in being Jewish. And so I'm not prepared to miss them because I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. But look, what I've said to recently, people ask me, well, what's your advice to Israel and what's your advice to the United States? I say, look, Israel's been independent for 73 years. It's really time for them to really have their independence. Meaning, the Israelis have been conditioned, unfortunately, through lots of criticism and difficulties around the world, to always think, well, if we do this, what's the world going to say? Judging their activities. Right. Now, Israel's a very powerful, strong, and healthy country. And like every other country, I think the first question ought to be, what do we want to do? Not what's the world going to let us get away with, what do we want to do? What is our strategy that fits the will of our people as a democratic society? What's good for Israel? Once they decide that, I think, okay, then go make your case to the world, but not to look at the world first as and then kind of retrofit the strategy. So that's, and I think that's very important. And I think it's time. Look, there's Israel is not really a young country anymore. We always think of Israel as a young country, but in the United Nations, there's about 190 countries. I think Israel's probably in the upper half in terms of longevity at this point. Wow. So it's time. It's time to be an independent country.
Yeah, but with Trump and with you as an ambassador, it seemed exactly like that's the way it was. It was. You didn't ask questions to anybody. You just went to.
Look, we had our views. It's not that we just sat there and watched. I mean, we had views. We shared them with the government, but our first question was always, you're a sovereign nation. What do you want to do? What do you think is in Israel's best interest? We didn't check with Israel when we wanted to do something. We didn't ask them, is it okay if we do this, this, or this? No, I mean, America is a sovereign country, and America acts for America. Israel should act for Israel. Now, where the interests are overlap, so we got to talk to each other and figure things out and figure out how to best move forward. But as two sovereign nations, with mutual respect, not as some prior administrations used to do. Is look, we give you money, we protect you. Now you got to do what we say. That's a terrible, disrespectful way to treat an ally.
Israel is also a Jewish country, and what I felt very strongly, especially with you and with Trump, who's not Jewish, is this belief that there is a Torah, and this was a country given to us by God, and it really felt that way, especially with the Abraham Accords, which has such a messianic name. I love this name.
Yeah.
Avraham Avinu. I don't know if it was chosen by you.
No, it was actually chosen by a Christian.
Nah.
Yeah, it was chosen by a Puerto Rican two-star general.
Are you serious?
Yeah, as we were getting ready, it was about a half an hour before we were about to go live.
Wow.
In the Oval Office, we had a call organized with the president and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they were going to call and they were going to normalize, and no one in the whole world knew about it. Right, it was going to happen, and then we were going to call in the press and make an announcement. And about a half an hour before this was all going to get started, General Miguel Correa, who was very active with us in this, two-star general, he says, we got to have a name. And we were so caught up in the substance, we weren't thinking about, a name. And I said, what do you mean a name? And he says, well, you have the Oslo Accords, you have the Camp David Accords. This is bigger than any of that. We have to have a name. I said, well, what do you think? He goes, I think the Abraham Accords. I said, I love it. And then I started calling all the other. I called up, Ron Dermer to make sure it was okay with him, and called up the ambassador for the UAE, and that's how it got started.
It's incredible. I actually thought it was Trump.
No, in fact, if you listen to the ceremony in the Oval Office, the president asked me to explain the derivation of the Abraham Accords. Of course, my explanation was not, we just thought of it half an hour ago. My explanation was, Avram Avinu is the father of Av Hamon Goyim, father of many nations, and he's called Avraham to Jews, and Ibrahim to Muslims, and Abraham to Christians. There's no one who best symbolizes the ability of all these faiths to work together. And then he said publicly, he says, I would have preferred the Trump Accords, but but I would have gotten a lot of blowback.
Thank
from
God it wasn't the Trump Accords. As much as I love him, this would not have been a good idea.
Yep.
I love this whole administration. You had Avi Berkowitz, you had Jason Greenblatt, Jared Kushner, you, all Jewish, religious, observant Jews in very important positions in the U.S. administration, which is something that has never happened. So I have two questions. Firstly, do you think we'll ever return with or without Trump? And in the end, what Trump has done, no other president managed to do before him. Like everybody's like talking. Yet Trump is the one who got the things done. Is it because of you guys, or?
Look. The president gave us a lot of authority, especially for Jared, who he was obviously very close to. I knew him for 20 years. Jason knew him for 20 years. So we had credibility with him. I think he respected us. He always respected our religious beliefs. I remember one time I was with him at a meeting, and it was like 3 o'clock on a winter Friday afternoon, and we were very in heated debate with some other people about a deal we were doing. And I just picked up and walked out. I said, I got to go. And like the other guys, who were mostly Jewish on the other side, said, where are you going? I said, I got to go home. I got to get home for Shabbat. And they're all upset. The Jews were all upset, but Trump said, go, you got to go. Trump said, look, he's got to go. He's got to go. So we, he used to always say, go home and pray for me when you're in the synagogue. So look, he respected that. I think, look, one thing that I think we did well, I don't want to compare myself to others, but I think one thing we did well was we were proud of our Judaism. We didn't carry it as a burden or something we had to make excuses for. Now, if you look around America is a great welcoming country to all kinds of diverse people. Generally speaking, most people celebrate their ethnicity. That's certainly true of the African American community, of the Hispanic community, of Christians and Protestants. Jews, it's not been our best quality to be proud of our Jewishness. We tend to try to make excuses for it. Now, we didn't do that. We were very proud. I mean, I come from, my father was a practicing rabbi, and we come from a 3,000-year-old history. And there are people today in Israel who pray the same prayers in the same language at the same place where they prayed 2,000 years ago, and we're all very proud of that. It doesn't mean that we don't represent the United States. That's who we work for. We always look to do what's best for the United States, but we're proud of being Jews. And we never make apologies for being Jews. And I was accused all the time of dual loyalty, and I just completely rejected it. It's not something which any other ethnic group gets accused of. I mean, there are lots of other ethnic groups that are in the State Department or in the government. None of them ever get accused of having dual loyalty. It seems to be our privilege as Jews to have that. But I have that accusation. But I always rejected it. I was always proud of being Jewish, and I carried that with me as a badge of honor throughout the 4 years that I was in office.
This is so important, this message, because for the new generation, people that want to go into politics, diplomatic career, to show that when you observe your Torah and your mitzvot and you're proud of what you do, it will only bring you respect. And
only bring you respect. By the way, not only in America, but we found that in the Arab world, even more so. Of course, look, the Arab world is a religious world.
But this is what Jason said. Interesting.
They're a religious world, and they care very much about affording people the opportunity to observe their religion. Look,
more than in Europe.
Oh yeah, way more than Europe. We have a documentary that is the first episode aired this past.
That's exactly what I want. The behind the scenes.
Yeah, no.
Where do we see it?
Okay, I'll tell you where to see it. But one of the things that I said to the president, kind of one of the comical scenes in the documentary, I said to the president that I have an easier time getting a kosher sandwich in Abu Dhabi than in Washington D.C.
No.
And he thought that was great. I mean, it's amazing. Look, I mean. The hotels in the Emirates have been directed to make sure they have kosher food available to their guests. I mean, very few hotels anywhere else in the world have that mandate.
Incredible.
So, in the Arab world, being observant, being a believer, doesn't matter what faith, is very much respected.
This is so important, and this brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, first, after you'll tell me where we can see this amazing.
Yeah.
I saw spots here and there, and I'm looking for it. The new administration, you sit on the side now and watch and cringe and cry and smile. What?
Sometimes I cringe.
Okay.
Sometimes I have other emotions. But Israel will survive this administration. I don't have any doubt. They survived 8 years under Obama. They will survive. They have to maintain a relationship with the United States, but at the same time stand on their principles. Like, obviously, they can't agree to divide Jerusalem, which is an issue that's been coming up lately. There are other points that they're going to have to hold tight on, and I believe, again, the U.S. will respect Israel as long as Israel respects itself. And if Israel respects itself, I believe that it'll be fine. I would say, don't worry about other countries. Just respect yourself. Do what you think is right and make your case, and the world will respect you.
Settlements included.
Settlements included. Whatever. I mean, look, whatever is. I'm not. I really do believe in Israeli democracy. I think that it's a very robust, complicated democracy, but it's a democracy, and I think the country needs to focus on issues that are important to people, come up with a consensus, and then move forward on that basis and make the case. But it all comes, I think, from self-respect. I mean, I have my own strong views about biblical Israel. I think that, I actually think, and part of Israel's self-respect is to respect places like Shiloh and Beit El and Hebron. I mean, this is who we are.
Is major.
It's who we are as a people. So again, I think the world loses respect for us if we lose respect for those places. And I believe the overwhelming majority of Israelis understand our heritage, the uniqueness of the Jewish heritage in the land of Israel, and are not prepared to compromise it.
Give it up.
Yeah.
So this brings me to my next question, which is, what about the new Israeli administration? So you like Bennett or not?
So I've been really careful not to speak about Israeli politics, Israeli politicians.
No, it's a more...
Look, I know him for many years. I've always liked him. I think the Israeli political process is incredibly complicated, and I would say this: I don't like to see the lack of civility. I think it puts Israel in a bad light. So, however people feel, they feel, and whatever the politics are, they are. But the public, the language, to me at least, has gotten too sharp and too hostile,
So
and people do need to speak to each other civilly. If we want to talk about the Jewish people and the unity of the Jewish people, we can't be unified if we speak to each other as if they're, our worst enemies. It's just not helpful.
First, you're right. You inaugurated the Friedman Center.
Yes.
How is it?
It's great. It's great. Look, we're not a traditional Jewish NGO. We operate on a low budget. We try to focus on projects that make sense. I mean, I've been working hard on the opposing the Jerusalem consulate for the Palestinians. We have some other objectives that we're moving forward on. When we see an opportunity that we think needs funding, we'll then go raise money for that. But I'm not looking to create, a large organization and then, basically be in business to stay in business. I mean, that's not my goal. Not my goal. But we've had, we've had some successes, and we have the movie, which again I think is incredible.
Amazing.
Look, the way to see it right now is very simple. You download the TBN application on a computer or an iPhone.
Okay.
You register, it's free.
Yeah.
And then you just scroll down and you look for the Abraham Accords.
It's called the Abraham Accords.
The film is called the Abraham Accords. It's a 4-part documentary. Episode 1 is out right now. It'll air through November. Then we'll go to episode 2 in December.
You
January,
narrate
February.
it, right?
I narrate it. I
amazing.
do 90% of the interviews. I've interviewed the president, vice president, secretary of state, Jared Kushner, most of the sheikhs in the Gulf, the prime minister, the defense minister. We tell the story of the Abraham Accords through the voices of those who really were active in them. And we also overlay to a certain extent, the theological meaning of the Abraham Accords.
Right.
You pointed out earlier, Abraham had 2 children. He had more than 2 children, but he had 2 children that we really focus on, right? Yitzchak and Ishmael, and he promised both that they would become great nations, right? So not just Yitzchak, but also to Ishmael. And they became great nations. But obviously, Yitzchak and Ishmael were rivals, and Ishmael was banished from the house of Abraham. And then they weren't, they were separate.
Right.
Just like the Arabs and the Jews were separate for so many thousands of years. But when Abraham passed away, right, Yitzchak and Ishmael got back together again. They buried him together, right? And they said that Ishmael was Choser B'Tshuvah. And so, to me, the Abraham Accords is really bringing back to life that reunification of 4,000 years ago between Yitzchak and Ishmael.
I say every time there is a Parshat HaShavua, it reflects what's going on this week in the world. It's incredible.
It is.
For me, when Trump was the president, he was a Achashverosh. It's,
Who was Esther?
I guess Ivanka.
she would make a good Esther. No question. Yeah.
For sure.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just to finish, just a few personal questions, because we always see your political side. What are you doing now? You're not playing golf in Miami?
I'm definitely not playing golf. So the first thing when January 21st, I was unemployed for the first time in 40 years, right? and I kind of freaked out, and I called everybody I knew in the government, and I asked them, what are you guys, what are you doing? What are you doing? Everybody was just, going to take some time off and decompress, and I don't know how to decompress, right? So I immediately wrote a book. That was the first thing. So
that's what I wanted.
So I had a contract with HarperCollins, so I wrote the book in 7 weeks, and we did the editing, and it's being released on February 8th.
Oh, very good.
February 8th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon or any other.
What's it called?
It's called Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer.
Yeah. The New York Times called me that when I used it to open up the passageway to in Ir David. So it's called Sledgehammer: How Breaking with the Past Brought Peace to the Middle East. That's the book, and it comes out February 8th. So I wrote the book.
For sure, get it.
Now, once the book is done, I still have nothing to do, and so and everybody else is still pondering the universe. So then I decided to make a movie, and that's where I partnered with TBN, and we flew all over the world with a film crew, and we did this documentary, which I think it's great. I really hope you watch it and people watch it. Everyone that's seen it has come back and said this is amazing.
Published, publicized it all over.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
It's really, really good. So Then I made the movie, and then after the movie was done, I started working on the foundation, and I also went into business with the Secretary of the Treasury, the former Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, and we're doing some investing together. So that's what I do, and so far it's kept me busy. Yeah.
You're a great team. It was like a little yeshiva there.
Well, look, we really liked each other.
Yeshiva.
We liked each other. We respected each other, and
you felt it.
yeah, you know, and look, we were in a battle every day. I mean, every day you wake up in the morning, no one knew what the next article would be about. But you have to just kind of.
You gave strength to people. I mean, for sure to me. Every day, you know, we all were fighting a war, and you really gave strength to us.
Well, you know, I really felt that I was put in this position for a reason, and I felt that I had nothing to, I had nothing to fear. You know, I thank God, you know, I think I've led a good life, you know, an upstanding life. You know, I wasn't worried about skeletons in the closet. I wasn't, you know, and I had the support of my family, and that's it. You have those things. I
know your wife is very important too.
She's very important. She's everything. She's everything, as are the kids.
Next time you come with your wife.
You should just speak to her alone.
I will. Okay, nice.
I'm sure she'd be happy to do it. But that's it. If you believe in what you're doing, and you have the strength, you know, you just do it, and you fight the fight, and you pray to God, and that's it.
Have you seen the Rebbe? Have you met the Rebbe?
I was too young. My parents did. I have pictures of them with him, but I think.
Because I know you're close to Chabad.
I am. Yeah. I think that Chabad, you know, is one of the real dynamic, you know, Jewish organizations in the world right now. I think they are doing incredible things to fight, to fight against the tide of assimilation and anti-Semitism and anti-Israel. I mean, they really have a formula of love, you know, of kind of avat chinam, you know, of bringing people together, and they've been incredibly successful. So I'm proud to support them and to be part of them.
You had at the inauguration Chabad rabbi speaking.
I had at the embassy opening.
Embassy opening, sorry.
Yeah, Rabbi Wallowik, sure.
Yeah,
he was.
That's amazing.
He and I are very close, and
it's a beautiful. Maybe we should have you two together once.
When he'll be able. I'd be happy to. I don't want to speak for him, but I'd love to, sure.
Just to finish, is Trump coming back?
You know, you're not the first person to ask me that question.
I know, but I had to.
So I don't know. I mean, I do speak to him. I don't know.
He's okay? He's doing well?
He's okay. He's doing great. I think he's feeling very appreciated now. You know, in the aftermath of his defeat, and I think he's feeling very loved by a lot of people. And we'll see. He'll make that. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Okay, we'll see. Mr. Friedman, thank you so much. Thank you for the inspiration, for the strength you give us, for your belief, for your standing, for being an observant Jew, strong with your strong beliefs. It gives us, at least me, or people who work in this business, an incredible power.
Well, thanks, Hadassah.
Thank you.
I enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.